Hey, I'm Serenity and this is my channel, and today we're joined here by Scarlett and Nova. They will be in the background of this video. And today I have another Charlatans Swindlers for you, which I will get into exactly what that is in a minute. But today we're talking about Pam Hupp, which is Major Karen. She's a Major Karen, and this is the first time in this series that I'm going to actually be talking about death and murder and that sort of thing. Usually the two bases of this series is one, it has to do with money. The whole reason the crime was committed has to do with money. And two, defraud. Something had to be defraud, whether it's the public, a person, whatever. Those are the main two criteria in this series. So this one definitely includes those two, but it does include an actual crime. Most of the time when I'm talking about this is like blue collar, white collar crime is what it's called, not actual vindictive, violent crime, I guess would be the word. So this one's a little different. It's very interesting. Stick around if you want to find out what it is. So let's get into it. So first things first, if you've never seen Charltans Swindlers, it's a series on my channel where basically I noticed around fall of 2021, a lot of Hollywood studios were coming out with TV shows and movies and that sort of thing based on real life events and true crime, but they were totally changing the story and making it more dramatized. And as an avid lover of true crime, I did not like that because I know the true stories on each and every single one of these, and I was like, no, that's not how that happened. And I've known these stories for years. So I decided to create a series where I'm comparing the two. I'm comparing the TV show, so we're gonna get kind of like a commentary on that. I'm gonna talk about the TV show or the series, documentary, whatever it is, and then I'm gonna explain it there, and then we're gonna get into what really happened, and I'm gonna tell you what was made up in the TV show, what didn't happen, what they left out, what I think is important, what I thought of the series, if it's worth watching, and most importantly, so you don't have to watch it because I forced myself to watch it. A couple of examples of these include the Tinder Swindler, Anna Delvey, Pam and Tommy, and Pam Hupp, all except Pam and Tommy that I've covered. You're watching one of them today, and I'll link it up here somewhere, whatever side it's on. Before we get in, if I'm looking off to the side, like always, that is where my iPad is. That's where the script is. Because if I don't have a script, I would not remember half of these things. All right, so let's get into it. On Tuesday, December 27th, 2011 in Troy, Missouri, Betsy Faria was found dead in her home on 130 Sumac Drive with deep sashes on her inner wrist and a knife sticking out of her neck. Her husband, Russ Faria, came home to the horrific scene after being out at a friend's house for his group's weekly Tuesday night game night, and he was playing Dungeons and Dragons there. Russ hysterically runs to the kitchen landline phone to call 911 after walking in and seeing his wife dead on the floor. The sheriff soon arrived at the scene of the crime and immediately arrests Russ, believing that it was a classic case of a spouse killing the other spouse. Russ is taken outside of his home and stripped of all his clothing that he is wearing so it may be put into evidence. That night, it was 14 degrees Fahrenheit outside. They take him down to the police station without reading Russ his Miranda rights. Miranda rights in the United States, which are now being taken away from us, are a warning type of notification that is customarily given by police to a criminal suspect in police custody, advising them of the rights to silence, that is, the right to refuse to answer questions or providing information to law enforcement or other officials that may incriminate them. The detectives immediately got to work investigating Betsy's murder. Who was Betsy Faria? She was a woman suffering from cancer, and on the day she was murdered, her chemo appointment had gone well. Betsy had had a mastectomy years ago, but the cancer had come back and spread to her liver this time. She was hanging out at her mom named Janet's house with her daughters, Mariah and Lily Day, after her appointments that day. Now, Betsy's best friend, Pam Hupp, was adamant about trying to pick Betsy up from her mom's house to take her back home that night to Betsy's house. Pamela Hupp was a self-proclaimed businesswoman who flipped houses, a realtor who hated Betsy's husband, Russell, and was a grade A level Karen. Now, she really was a Karen, and you're gonna want to remember that point throughout this whole video. She was blonde, colored eyes, Karen. Karen haircut, like short hair, yeah. Betsy was insistent on either staying the night at her mom's house that night or having Russ, her husband, pick her up after his game night. At 5:30 p.m., Pam picks up Betsy from Betsy's mom's house. Russ gets a text from Betsy telling her Pam will be taking her home. Betsy heads home with Pam, and her daughters stay at their grandma's house. Mariah, one of her daughters, lived with her grandma because her house was in a better school district, so she got to go to a better school by staying with her grandma. Pam insists on going into Betsy's house once they arrive and watching a show or movie before she leaves, but Betsy is just tired and wants to go to sleep. Pam had promised they would call Mark, Pam's husband, when they arrived at Betsy's home. At 7:04 p.m., the call goes to voicemail, leaving a time-stamped message. Later that night, Pam calls Betsy and leaves a voicemail to her to call her back, even though Pam is still near Betsy's house. Pam calls Janet, Betsy's mom, that night at the hour of 8 p.m., claiming that she can't get a hold of Betsy and claims that Bets wanted to watch a show, but Pam said no and left, which we know is not true because Pam was the one who asked to come in for a late night show. Lastly, Pam tells Janet that she hopes Russ got home safely and checked on Betsy. At 9:01, Russ left his friend's house after game night, stopping at an Arby's on the way home to pick up a late night snack. His receipt was time-stamped at 9:09 p.m. At 9:38 p.m., Russ arrives home with the takeout and dog food he had picked up earlier that day and sees his dog is outside, something that Betsy would never done, especially outside in the front, not in the backyard. The dog was just staying in the front of the yard. Down at the station, Russ is being interrogated without a lawyer and is freezing cold, asking for a second blanket because when they had undressed his outer clothing, they only gave him a blanket to cover himself up, and I mean, it's cold. It was 14 degrees at this time. The county district attorney comes down to the station asking if Russ had been read his Miranda rights. That's when the detectives finally go read Russ his rights as he is severely sleep deprived. In the early hours, officers arrive at Betsy's house to inform Janet of her daughter's murder. The officers then arrive at Pam's house next and inform her that Betsy was murdered the night before, and Pam just cries fake tears. The officers interview Pam about her relationship with Betsy and she gives them the following story. So this is what Pam tells the police. This is not what others would say. Betsy and Russ had separated 6 to 8 times. How Russ hits Betsy and is emotionally abusive to her, according to Pam. Russ and Betsy were married on and off for about 12 years, eventually went to their local church where they met with a minister and eventually got back together. Betsy's daughters were bratty and Betsy's mother Janet was rude. Lily Day, Betsy's eldest daughter, stole money from her grandma Janet. Pam also collaborates to Russ being guilty by sharing how Lily's ex-boyfriend, Betsy's daughter, was violent and Russ had run him out of the house yelling one. Pam claims that she works with battered women and hangs out with her mom on Tuesdays who has Alzheimer's. Pam had free time after she had an accident at work. A shelving cabinet fell on her and injured her back, which led to surgery and eventual early resignation and Social Security disability benefits. However, Pam's story keeps getting mixed up. She does not have one straight, conclusive story. Lastly, Pam tells investigators that Betsy was trying to email her some letter about Russ smothering her in her sleep. Pam claimed Betsy loved to send emails because apparently sending emails was easier and cheaper than text. That day, Pam visits Janet and brings her a necklace she bought before Betsy's death at the gas station to give to Janet, claiming it reminded her of Betsy and all the love she brought to her family. Still at the station, Russ is subjected to a polygraph test when police totally ignore Betsy's daughter, Mariah, at the station looking for her dad. Russ fails 100% of his polygraph test, but we know polygraph tests are not very reliable. Russ was held for 24 hours and the DA made them release him for no evidence. Pam's husband, Mark, is asked to be interviewed. On the night of December 21st, 2011, Mark Hupp was at home, he tells police. Pam quickly hijacks Mark's interview and forces him to play a voicemail Betsy and Pam left for him that night for the police. Then Pam forces the police into looking to find the letter that Betsy was to email her that she mentioned in her past interview. Based on Pam's interview, the city's district attorney, Leah Ashke, gets a plausible cause and warrant for Russell's arrest. Russ refuses to get a lawyer because he's remaining his innocence, so police break into Russ's mother's home where he was staying to arrest him. Russ finally asks for a lawyer after being convinced by his family to do so. A defense attorney from a neighboring town named Joel Schwartz is his hired lawyer. Lincoln County sheriffs, based on Pam's interviews and common domestic violence profilations when a spouse is killed is so brutally, painted Russ and Betsy's relationship as an on and off again, with Russ having a violent temper. Now, the autopsies revealed that Betsy was stabbed 50 times, so police closed the case right there as one of passion by a lover. Joel Schwartz, Russ's lawyer, puts in a request for the evidence on this case from the prosecution. Now, Leah Ashke, the district attorney, was newly elected, having only been in office for 1 month. She refuses to lose her first case that will be tried and doesn't want Russ's lawyer to kick her down by not winning the case. In their first meeting, which takes place in jail, Russ asks his lawyer Joel to interview his friends that are his alibi for that night. The reports Joel requests get back to him, reporting that Russ had no blood on him at the scene when he was picked up to be taken down to the station. Also, the investigation camera that took pictures malfunctioned at the crime scene, so there was supposedly no picture evidence from the scene. After he visited the jail, Russ's lawyer doesn't believe he committed the crime. He knows how someone acts when they are guilty, and Russ is not acting that that way at all. Police began their investigation while Joel goes through the evidence. Head investigator Ryan McCarrick tests the Arby's drive-thru and time from Betsy's house to see if Russ had a real alibi on why he couldn't commit the murder. The time on the receipt corroborates that Russ would have had enough time to get home after his trip to Arby's and commit the crime. Meanwhile, at the Hupp house, Pam and Mark are talking about how all of the Florida money is gone. We'll get back to whatever that means later. Also, Pam's disability for her bad leg has ended because she doesn't qualify anymore for some reason that we never found out what that reason is. The disability she got after she got injured at work. Now, Joel Schwartz and his assistant attorney, Nate Swanson, look at some of the crime scene photos that were not lost to the cameraman function and realize that the knife that was stuck in Betsy's throat was actually put in there after. It was placed there to hide a bruise that was on Betsy's neck, and the knife was put in after to hide fingerprints from the bruise that was formed from being strangled. This was methodical, okay? It was not passionate. It was done to hide some sort of evidence on the deceased body. There was also blood smeared on the light switch in the kitchen. Blood was also in a pair of slippers in the closet, not on, in. Betsy's daughters go back to the house that their mother was killed in to pick up something they needed, and they still see these horrific sight of unclean blood on their living room floor. Side note, Day Ashke was also having an affair with the head detective, Ryan McCarrick. This town was so small, but everyone knew that. And everyone knew everyone. Joel decided to ask for Pam Hupp's cell phone data from the night to see if her story adds up. It was also revealed that Pam took 2 showers that night. One the night of the murder after she got home from dropping Betsy off on December 27th, and 2, the second shower, in the morning before the police came to interview her. Kay Ashke and Pam bond over Zumba. You guys remember Zumba? When Pam is called in to meet with Leah, and Pam agrees to testify at Russ's trial for prosecution. Now, Nate and Joel discover something about Betsy's money. Her life insurance policy beneficiary was changed from her husband Russ after 8 years to her best friend Pam Hupp only 4 days before the murder was committed. Police learned this thinking Russ killed Betsy in retaliation for changing the life insurance policy beneficiary now that he won't get any of the money, and this became one of the trial motives for the prosecution. Now, Pam explains why Betsy changed her to the beneficiary instead of her mother, because Janet, Bet's mom, was bad with money. That's why her name wasn't put instead of Russ's. Pam was also set up to take care of the kids and set up a trust for both of the daughters. Pam calls the insurance company to get the money, and an old friend of Pam's named Dusty, who got promoted to head and manager, gets her the money right away rather than waiting a couple weeks it takes to get approved. Janet begins asking Pam for the money that is meant for her granddaughters, who she is now fully taking care of, but Pam doesn't respond. Mark Hupp is stressed about their house payment and how it is growing mold in their house, but Pam says not to worry. She somehow has the money to pay for the house's mortgage now. Pam's mom finds out that she got the money and bullies her into telling that she needs to get a facelift using the money, which is an important point for later in the story. While investigating his defense case, Joel uncovers how at one point Pam threatened to sue the hospital her son was born in, claiming he was born with cerebral palsy, which is not true, and this shows the case. If you don't know what cerebral palsy is, it is a congenital disorder of movement, muscle tone, or posture. Cerebral palsy is due to abnormal brain development, often before birth. Symptoms include exaggerated reflexes, floppy or rigid limbs, and involuntary motions. These appear in early childhood. A particular type of brain damage that causes cerebral palsy occurs during childbirth when the supply of oxygen to the baby's brain is temporarily interrupted. It can happen when forceps, that are basically giant tweezers, are used to grab a baby's head to help get the baby out. Cerebral palsy is the most common type of serious birth injury and is the subject of many medical malpractice lawsuits. Now, Pam's son does not have cerebral palsy, just so you know, just so we get that clear. Pam also threatened to sue her work office for a filing cabinet falling on her, which led to her getting the disability for her bad leg that had just ended, as I mentioned earlier. Investigators bring Pam in to ask about the insurance policy money, making sure they have their story straight before the trial begins. Pam claims that the $150,000 from Betsy's insurance policy was just sitting in Pam's bank account untouched. Investigators ask her about the defense theory that Pam killed Betsy for insurance money that was just put in her name as the beneficiary, and if there was a reason for that to be true. Pam tells them why would she kill Betsy if she gets $500,000 when her mom dies. $150,000 was nothing to her, which is such an odd thing to bring up, but okay. Anyways, Pam promises that the trust for Lily and Mariah Betsy's kids will be set up before the trial begins, where the prosecution can use the fact that the evidence against the defense that Pam did not keep that money for herself. Joel and Nate learn that the Arby's receipt is timestamped when the order is placed, not when the order is paid or received. So how the police prove that Russ could have killed Betsy in that time period that the receipt had is no longer valid because that time was no longer feasible to get to his home in time to commit the crime. The defense also believes that the slippers, as I mentioned earlier, were dipped in blood and then thrown in the closet. And Betsy's socks, which had blood on them, were used as makeshift gloves, so no fingerprints would be left at the scene. The trial is about to begin with Pam Hupp as the prosecution's star witness. Already this trial is biased because the judge presiding over the case went to high school with Leah Ashke, the prosecution's DA, along with their kids being best friends. 2 days before the trial started, the defense still has not received the photo evidence that they requested a while ago. They are running through their facts again when they learn that Betsy and Pam called Mark at 7:41 p.m. in the driveway of the Faria house, and Pam called Betsy 21 minutes later, still 3 miles away from Pam's house. So theologically speaking, Pam could be calling Betsy from her house's neighborhood, meaning she never left Betsy's house to go back to her own. The trial will be aired on local TV, and Pam just wants to be seen on the local news. This is what she's looking forward to most. Pam is not allowed in the courtroom until it is her turn to testify. Like all witnesses aren't, so their testimony is not swayed by what is happening in the courtroom. No one from Pam's family is there in court during the trial because they all have to work, so Pam asks her neighbor named Minnie if she can be in the courtroom. Minnie is under the instruction to tell Pam everything that is happening in the courtroom so Pam stays in the loop. The defense goes on to ask the neighbor, Minnie, if Pam's car was in the driveway at the time that she claimed to be home the night of Betsy's murder. The neighbor says yes, but that she didn't see the car physically, so because she was watching The Biggest Loser. Remember that show? That was a show on its own. Mariah and the DA, Leah Ashke, meet up at Mariah's workplace to talk. Leah is trying to get Mariah to testify against Russ or she'll force her to. Sadly, Mariah is forced to testify against Russ, the only father figure she has ever had in her life. Pam won't let the girls, Lily and Mariah, have their trust money until after the trial, holding it over them. The story of this case travels all the way to Chicago to the NBC Dateline producer, Kathy Singer. Kathy Singer is all over this case as soon as she learns about the details, which is actually the first national and major news source to pick up this case. Kathy asks her personal assistants if they know anything about Pam Hupp or Leah Ashke. They say no, so Kathy decides to attend the trial herself to see about doing a Dateline episode on the case. This little fact about Kathy Singer, the NBC Dateline producer, is actually very important to the series because this show was made for Peacock, an original series on NBC's streaming service. Kathy Singer was one of the first people to pick up this case. The first Dateline episode, which I will get to in a few minutes, was really the first time this case was seen nationally. So NBC really has first pickings on this case. How this show is based on the podcast by NBC titled by the same name, Thing About Pam, which was released in September of 2019 with updated episodes in 2021 and 2022. It is told by Keith Morrison, who also narrated this show, which we'll talk about that more later when we get to the real life story updates and more. I just want to talk about it a bit to explain why Kathy Singer is so important to this case. TV drama series being made and more, so it's also very meta if you ask me. The show literally is having an actress play Kathy Singer, the producer on Dateline, who produced the podcast, TV show, and Dateline episodes on this case. It's a very fourth wall breaking experience. Anyways, enough about that. Let's get back to the story showline. Timeline. Pam meets the DA, Leah, at a kid's birthday party and tells her that the defense is harassing her and her neighbors, which isn't true at all. I guess if I haven't said it yet, Pam is a level 100 Karen. Ashke tells Pam not to worry because Pam herself and the judge are all God-fearing women. Before the trial begins, Joel Schwartz brings Russ Hellboy comics to prison to enlighten the mood for the following somber news. Joel tells Russ that the prosecution is going to call Lily and Mariah, his stepkid, to testify against him. They're going to try and make him look like a bad guy. But Russ refuses to slander his daughters at all. He doesn't want to stoop that low. Right before the trial begins, DA Ashke filed 6 motions to not present certain evidence to the jury. The motion to block any implication of Pam being Russ's killer, along with Pam being the beneficiary of Betsy's life insurance policy. The state's motion to block the phone records Joel has obtained showing where Pam was at the time of the murders. The judge grants all these states motioned. Remember, the judge and Leah Ashke are friends from high school. Pam was sitting outside waiting for Ashke at the motion to see if the defense would be able to use the evidence they found against her, and was super relieved to hear that the jury would not hear any of it. Now, the local news channel news station asked Joel, the defense lawyer that is known for defending drug dealers and murderers, why he took on the case. Pam's neighbor, Minnie, is at the trial texting all the updates to Pam, who is outside the courtroom. It is revealed that Betsy was stabbed 56 times. Again, it's a crime of passion. Outside the courtroom in the hall, Pam and the investigating cops, Detective Ryan McCarrick and Detective Michael Merkel, talk about the case, doing something they are not allowed to do. Pam was also comforting Mariah Day, Betsy's daughter, who really saw Russ Faria, her stepfather, as her dad. Pam was actually consorting the poor girl to testify against how violent her stepdad was right before Mariah went to testify on the stand. In the courtroom, District Attorney Leah Ashke was distorting Dungeons and Dragons as a violent game that Russ would play with his friends every Tuesday night during their weekly game night. But if you don't know what Dungeons and Dragons is, it's basically like this fantasy tabletop role-playing game. The core of D&D is storytelling. You and your friends tell a story together, guiding your heroes through quests of treasures, battles with deadly foes, daring rescues, courtly intrigue, and much more. It's not violent at all. If anything, it is a very creative game that you must use your imagination for. And if you watch Stranger Things, it's a very big thing on that show. Not a dangerous game, it's not a violent game, it's an imaginative, creative game. She talks about how Russ and Betsy got married when Mariah was only 5 years old. They would argue and bicker a lot, fight by yelling across the house, cursing at each other. At times, Russ would curse at their daughters, and that made Mariah fearful of Russ and his temper at times. Russ cries as his daughter's testimony because he never knew any of this or what trauma he may have caused her. After finishing her testimony, Pam is outside the courtroom in the hallway waiting for Mariah to come out from her testimony. Mariah is hysterically crying and Pam is pathetically trying to comfort her, but really just making sure that she told the jury all about Russ's yelling and how he was violent. Russ comes out after the first day of the trial, and Mariah wants to hug him, but Pam pulls her back, telling Mariah how her mother would be proud of her for testifying against her abuser. You can tell that Mariah was devastated about what she had to say. Russ is also tearful because he loved his stepdaughters. Leah dismisses one of the officers to testify because she doesn't need him anymore, the one she isn't having an affair with. The police officer named Ryan McCarrick and Pam talking in the courtroom waiting for witnesses when he said that they can track your phone, and Pam is surprised by this news. One of the detectives testified that there was no blood on the defendant, how he could have washed off the blood, and how there was blood all over the carpet. However, they did a luminol test in the kitchen that showed the perpetrator cleaned themselves up in the kitchen. That's why they think the perpetrator washed themselves up. However, the camera with those pictures malfunctioned, so there are no photos. So there's no way to back up these claims. After the first couple of days of the trial, the defense, Joel and Nate, are at a local dive bar talking strategy. An old friend from college of Nate's comes over. He works in the district attorney's office and tells the pair Sally that Troy, Missouri is a small town where everyone knows everyone, which we already learned, but he says that Russ was never going to get a fair trial there. The defense realizes that in order to sink Pam Hupp when she takes the stand to testify, they need to sink Leah Ashke's prosecution. Pam takes the testimony stand and she is so happy all eyes are on her. Pam starts by saying that Betsy came over one day claiming to complain about her increase in weight. Pam tells her that she's not fat. The weight she's gaining is a sign of cancer. Pam is the reason Betsy went to the doctor, showing how her cancer came back in her liver, which is a weird thing to say to a friend. Pam knew Betsy would need her to take care of her while Betsy went through chemo and multiple doctor appointments. This is all besides the fact that Pam can barely drive because she is disabled herself. She has lost discs in her back and has metal plate along with a TENS unit for nerve shocks in her leg, which yes does qualify someone to get Social Security disability. Pam insisted that she had to stay strong for Betsy, who needed her more than putting her own health first. Pam was always over at Betsy's house where Russ would be there smoking even though Betsy was going through chemotherapy. The defense asked why Pam never said anything about this to Russ. Betsy was also afraid of Russ, who would constantly degrade Betsy, and Pam stuck around for her. But Pam also claims that she had only met Russ 3 times during her whole friendship duration with Betsy when the defense asks about how how her previous 2 claims make sense then. How can you have met this man only 3 times but also know so much about him? Pam claims she doesn't remember the exacts because she has a brain injury, just that everyone knew Russ was degrading towards Betsy. However, Betsy's family never heard anything from Betsy or about Betsy and Russ being abusive towards her. Also, why did Pam never mention her supposed brain injury when she talked about her disabilities in the beginning of the trial? Defense questions why Pam even took Betsy home on the night of December 27, 2011, when she didn't need a riot. Betsy had asked to stay with her mom where her family was, along with her own daughters, or wait for Russ's game night to finish so he can pick her up on his way home. Pam still forced Betsy to leave them all behind and drove her home anyways because Pam insisted if she didn't do so, no one else would. Pam told the jury that they arrived at Betsy's house at 7:04 p.m. Betsy wanted to chat, so Pam stayed for around 20 minutes. Pam never went into the house, claiming they chatted in a car, but then said she did go into the house and they chatted in the house. Pam didn't remember the specifics, but then remembered the real story later. The defense is interrogating Pam when the prosecution and judge forced them to stop because Mrs. Hupp was not on trial. The defense begins to ask Pam why on December 23, 2011, the beneficiary on Betsy's 3 life insurance policies changed from Russ to Pam for the first time in 8 years. The judge stops Joel from continuing, claiming she needs to hear what he's going to say with this factoid before the judge does, so that the jury is forced to leave. So they continue questioning Pam with the jury out of the room to see where the defense was going with this. As mentioned before, Pam claims Betsy made her the beneficiary because she couldn't trust Russ. But anything about what she previously stated, that Betsy's mom, Janet, was bad with money also. However, the defense asked then why did Pam tell the insurance company that Lily was on drugs and Mariah was known to blow money away when they asked about the next of kin of Betsy's. Mariah, Janet, and Lily were all in the court watching when this shocking news was revealed. Pam states that she doesn't remember saying that, but how she's going through menopause. But again, what does that have to do with anything other than being another excuse? The judge says the jury can't hear any of that due to pretrial motion to block any implication of Pam being Betsy's killer, along with Pam being the beneficiary of Betsy's life insurance policy. The jury is brought back in and told to dismiss anything they may have heard regarding the life insurance money. As Pam leaves the stand, she has an over-exaggerated limp that she did not have before she walked to the stand. Lily and Mariah leave the courtroom to Pam waiting for them outside, claiming the defense is lying, and she never said that about the 2 girls. Pam is supposed to look after them, but the girls don't want to hear excuses. They just want their money. Pam did set up that trust fund for each of them, though, before the trial started. The neighbor Minnie tells Pam that Dateline talked to her about how Kathy Singer asked about her, and Minnie just said how great Pam was and how close Betsy was to Pam as her best friend. How everything felt like a movie now. Pam is excited about the show, but tells her neighbor to no longer talk to the producer again. Russ's friend take the stand, people who have known him for 15 years. They each talk about how they were nerds and have game nights every Tuesday. All of the friends spoke to the police 3 times, and their stories have never changed or wavered on any details. A cellular mapping specialist takes a stand on behalf of the defense. They were able to locate Russ's phone at Arby's at 9 p.m. on the night of December 27, 2011. Russ can't be in 2 places at the same time. He can't be at the Arby's and at his home killing Betsy. Police never touched on his alibi. There was an unreasonable doubt in their case. After a 3-short-day trial, closing arguments began. The DA talks about Betsy's life. She was a mom to 2 daughters, loved music, and she was an amateur DJ who was a victim of domestic violence. Her friend, Pam Hupp, knew of this. The steak knife from the kitchen that was used to stab Betsy was personal. Then Russ went to go to the shower, the evidence away, along with slippers that had blood on them. Russ had no blood because he did the deed naked with only slippers on. Betsy's death was not a suicide. Then DA Leah Ashke pulled this insane theory. Sean Walker, Russ's friend, went to the Arby's drive-thru and brought the food and traded receipts to Russ after he killed Betsy for changing her beneficiary recipient. Defense protested the speculation, but the judge allowed it. Russ and his 4 friends did it. They all killed Betsy. The defense claims there is unreasonable doubt. There were no wounds on Russ or a scratch along with no blood under his fingernails. His alibi supports this. Russ was at the pet store that day, picking up dog food before he went home later that night. There was no time to shower and wash off the blood and then call police. The bottom slippers had no blood, only on the top. Russ had 4 friends as his alibi, all who testified for him. Both sides rest their case. It's in the jury's hand now to make a decision. The jury returned with a verdict. They found Russ Faria guilty on count 1 of first-degree murder and count 2 of armed criminal action. He was sentenced to life without parole. Daughters were sitting in the courtroom to see Russ taken away. The cops are clapping at the verdict and for DA Ashke's success. Kathy Singer from Dateline talks to Joel as he leaves the courthouse. Joel tells her that he won't be stopping until Russ is free 1983, he would have never gotten a fair trial in Troy, Missouri, which we all know is true. Pam celebrating Russ's demise, going in to get a facelift with a $2,500 deposit. After the trial, Pam calls the company she set up Betsy's daughter's trust with, asking for both balances to be transferred into her own personal bank account. The Dateline special on this case airs, and Mark, Pam's husband, says that no one is going to see it, which isn't true. Now that the first trial is over, episode 4 gives us a much needed background on who Pam Hupp is, so let's get into it. In 1997, Pam was a poor but popular high school cheerleader and senior heading to Mitsu, the University of Missouri, for a teaching degree just like her mother. Her mom, Shirley Newman, was a teacher and very degrading towards her daughter. In retaliation to her mother telling her not to sleep with her prom date, Pam sleeps with him and ends up pregnant with her first child. In 1984, in Troy, Missouri, Pam's daughter, Sarah, wets herself while sleeping, normal for kids to do, and Pam makes her put on her soiled underwear on top of her head as punishment, telling Sarah how she owes her for having a potty training accident. But all in all, Pam claims she's a good mother, a much better mother than her mother ever was. Pam marries her high school boyfriend, Randy Gunderson, before their daughter Sarah was born, making her not a bastard because she was married to her child's father before she was born, unlike what Pam's mother, Shirley, says to the poor little girl. Now, Pam is a stay-at-home mom to a working husband, and they are poor with little to no extra money. Pam decides to dump the full milk carton contents down the sink to go out and buy some more using some of her husband's money that she demands from him. Pam goes to the bar instead of getting the milk at the grocery store, using the money to buy beer. Pam meets Mark Hupp, her second husband, who is a promising-looking prospect to go into the MLB, which is Major League Baseball, about to head down to Florida for AAA. The AAA is a minor league baseball league where some promising players go to get scouted later on in their career. Pam overhears this while Mark is talking to another woman at the bar. To talk to Mark, Pam locks the girl in the bathroom so she can flirt with Mark, asking when they leave for Florida. Pam leaves her first husband, Randy, for Mark, and they took off to Florida with her daughter, Sarah. In 1989, in Naples, Florida, Pam has another kid, a son named Travis, along with her daughter. Pam takes care of an elder woman named Miss Fitzgerald as her job, who has no living family around, just Pam, her caretaker. The four are hanging around the pool when Pam watches over Mrs. Fitzgerald. When her daughter Sarah asks for another cookie from the container, Pam slaps her daughter's hand and tells her she can't have another cookie because she's getting fat, how lucky she is that Pam is her mom and not her grandmother because her grandma used to beat her. Pam is now in charge of the finances. When her husband asks for money for a beer, Pam tells him they are on a budget, so no. Mark never went into the MLB because he broke his arm playing AAA in Florida. In Naples, Florida, 2003, Pam is seen blow drying wet money, then ironing it. She has a whole suitcase full of money. Mark walks in on her asking if they are finally going to buy a house down in Florida and set roots. He drove by a nice house on Berrywood that they should put an offer in when Pam announces she doesn't want to live in Florida anymore. She changed her life to move to Florida from Mark years ago, but now that he doesn't play AAA anymore and Mrs. Fitzgerald died, she has no reason to stay in the state anymore and would rather move back to Troy, Missouri, especially since Miss Fitzgerald's extended family won't let Pam plan her funeral, even though she took care of the elderly woman for years and knows the best discounts for funerals. This is around this time Pam meets Betsy after they move back to Missouri. In 2007, Betsy and Pam became best friends. Betsy even DJ'd Pam's daughter's wedding, where Pam pressures Betsy into giving the service for free. Fast forward to the present timeline, Pam, her mother Shirley, and her kids Travis and Sarah are out at lunch to celebrate Shirley's birthday. Patient Pam blows out her mother's birthday candles while she forces her daughter Sarah to pay for her meal because she has a good job, while Pam pays for herself, Travis, and her mother. Sarah's husband, Scott, is a real estate agent who flips houses just like Pam. When Sarah talks about how they are about to flip a house, one which Pam bids on and steals right from under her own daughter for more money than she has to spend, using Betsy's insurance money to buy it. It costs $95,000, when her daughter only had $80,000 to buy it. Sarah is also a teacher, which I think is why her mom resents her a bit, because she has the job Pam never got the chance to pursue. Pam takes her mom back to her senior living home after lunch to keep her spot in Shirley's trust, where we see Pam stealing from her mother while in her mother's room. 2 years pass in the timeline. Kathy Singer from Dateline shows up at Pam's house for her statement 2 years later about Russ's possible retrial because Pam no longer answers texts from Kathy. At the very least, Kathy asked Pam to send her a new photo of herself because she did get that facelift. Joe is pushing for a retrial, and Pam is ironically the reason for it, for getting Joel's ball rolling. Lily and Mariah are in a civil suit against Pam for their trust money being stolen, which we'll talk about trial a little bit later, but right now Joel can get Russ a hearing before a judge for a motion. After 3 years, Russ is granted a retrial that will be presided over only by one judge and no jury. In the last trial, 1 out of the 12 jurors voted that Russ was innocent. Russ agrees to a retrial, thinking he has a chance with one judge versus 12 jurors. When Pam hears the news, she is outraged because she thought it would take 5 to 6 years for a retrial, according to what District Attorney Leah Ashke had told her. DA Ashke calls Pam into her office to talk about Russ's retrial and Pam testifying again. When asked about Betsy's insurance policy money, Pam claims that the money is still there in her bank account and that she knows how to handle her money. She was in fact top of her college class, Pam brags to Ashke, but Pam actually never went to college because she was a teen mom and a stay-at-home mother. Now the defense deposition grills the prosecution lawsuit. The testimony pressed Pam if she was forced by the police or detectives to open the trust is true in the first place. The DA, Ashke, is up for re-election, so she's pressuring her Assistant District Attorney Tina to keep checking her Facebook re-election page to see if citizens are engaged with it. Tina finds evidence that wasn't filed or tested properly or tested against Russ's DNA, and when she asks Leah about it, the DA claims that they won fair and square. Why to change their tactics on the second trial, and why do they need to test the evidence? We cut to Pam, who is behind on paying her mortgage, with the money from Betsy's insurance running low. All she has left is a stack of cash from which she says Betsy would want her to keep as a keepsake. Russ is still in jail, and Kathy Singer is working on an update Dateline episode. Kathy is interviewing Betsy's mother, Janet, for the new episode when Janet states that they better state the fact that Russ did it, not Pam Hupp. That's who she believes killed her daughter. How Pam was there for the family and how was the police star witness on the trial. Pam is interviewed again by DA Leah, ADA Tina, and the two detectives, where she shares some information that was never heard before. Pam saw an inverted nipple on Betsy and told her it was a sign of cancer. How Pam replaced what a husband should have been by insinuating Betsy and her had sex between the two of them often. How Betsy was attracted to her and was even in love with Pam. Betsy wanted more than sex though. She wanted a relationship after Pam gave into the sex with Betsy because it was a caregiver thing to do and it was nothing more to Pam. Russ knew this and was jealous, along with being severely mad at Betsy and Pam. One day, Pam and Betsy were playing softball in the basement, which why the hell do you play softball? Any ball game inside? Why don't you play that outside? Anyways, Russ walked in and Russ got physical with Pam, pinning her against the wall when he said he would stab and bury Pam in the yard. But remember from the first trial, Pam had only met Russ 3 times. Tina tells Leah that it's time to move away from Pam's lies. She will hurt their chances at a retrial. Leah rebuttals that Pam isn't lying. This time they just can't put too much weight on Pam. Pam also reminds them of the 2011 email that she believes was never sent, and bets the document is still on Betsy's computer, detailing how Russ would put a pillow over her face in Betsy's sleep in an attempt to suffocate her to death. The trial begins with national news coverage covering the retrial. Joel can't promise Russ a win, but they'll have a better shot this time around. A medical examiner said there was bruising around Betsy's neck, like the defense believes, which helps set up that Pam committed the crime. Greg, an IT specialist for the defense, talks about how the letter Pam was so adamant that the prosecution needed to find has the original date and filing on Betsy's computer. He explains that there was a cybercrimes PDoc ran on Betsy's computer where he found the following information. Metadata is a code in Word that makes a code on when the document was opened, written, and what version of Word it was made on. Word users can't control this unless the document was created on another computer or changed manually, which many average people wouldn't know how to do. The letter was written on Word 1997, Univocal 2003, the program that was not installed on Betsy's computer. She had an older version of this that proves the letter was written on a different computer and had a copy transferred over to Betsy's computer. Do you know who had Word 1997? Installed on their computer? I'm sure you can guess it. Pam Hupp did. The defense reads the letter they found on Betsy's computer. The basis was basically that Betsy needed help, she was scared and tired, and if something was to happen to her, to tell the police that Russ did it. However, the oddest part was that the email sounded happy in tone. Defense present their evidence that Pam Hupp was the real murderer. They present the evidence about the malfunctioned camera from the first retrial. See, Miss Tina, Leah Ashke's assistant district attorney, did a very heroic thing in this case. That box of evidence that was never tested, Tina sent it all to be tested at the labs and sent the results to Joel Swartz under an anonymous sender because she believed in the integrity of being honest in every case. Police lied about the camera malfunctioning. In that box of evidence, it showed nothing of a broken camera. Detective Michael Merkel, who did help with the original investigation but did not have a personal connection with the DA, testified on the stand. He did not testify in the first trial because he wasn't asked to, but in this trial, he was called to the stand and admitted that the head detective never developed the photographs on that camera. Due to nothing in those photos being what the prosecution wanted to see, was incriminating of Russ to them, unlike what was testified in the first trial where Russ cleaned up Betsy's blood on him. Greg Chanton, a digital forensic scientist, testified that a picture called Exhibit O was a luminol test photo taken of the Faria sink that shows absolutely nothing. No washed off blood, nothing. Just a sink with normal germs. The defense questioned Detective Ryan McCarrick, who had admitted that they did not interview any of Pam's neighbors about when she got home that night, or if she was home at the time when the crime took place. So no one knew where Pam was. Along with the defense showing that previous evidence that Pam's phone was triangulated to be in Betsy's neighborhood at the time she called Betsy again after she dropped her off. A cell tower 3 miles more or less was where Pam's phone was pinged in the area. Joel showed evidence that Pam had a poor financial situation. She was late on her COBRA payment. She had received $150,000 from Betsy's payout, which miraculously fixed all of her financial issues. Tina asked Ashke if they should still call Pam to the stand to testify for the prosecution. The state rests their case instead of calling Pam. The defense also chose to rest their case and not call Pam to the stand to testify, claiming they didn't need her lies in court. The judge reaches a verdict, starting by stating he is sorry for Russ's family and the family of Betsy's, and a new investigation will be launched. The judge states that more questions arose than answered. He did not have any patience for DA Ashke's lies. The verdict was read. Count 1, Russell Scott Faria, was found not guilty. Count 2, also not guilty. Mariah was relieved because in her heart, her stepdad was never guilty. Everyone in the court was relieved except for DA Ashke, Betsy's family, and Pam Hupp. Jill Swords stepped away for a moment, crying with happy relief. Champagne was popped outside for Russell, who was now a free man. Lily still thinks Russell did it, but Mariah knows Pam did it and kept the girls away from Russ, that their mother's murderer had just walked free. Pam believes that if she was called to testify, then Russ wouldn't be free. Ashke fumbled the case by not calling her. Ashke's re-election campaign is not doing well, especially after losing the retrial. Joel is willing to share his evidence with Ashke, but she says no. She is too prideful for that, especially now that it looks like Troy, Missouri might have to try Pam Hupp for a murder of Betsy Faria. Joel sees Tina with a file folder, the same one that held the evidence that was anonymously sent to them. He puts 2 and 2 together and realizes that Tina sent the winning evidence to the defense. He asks Tina how she likes working for Leah, and Tina replies that she doesn't work for Leah, she works for the county. Tells her that the city is lucky to have her. Leah Ashke calls for the destruction of evidence 1 through 214 and all court logs to be destroyed in the Betsy Faria case. But just before that happens, Tina calls that order off and has the evidence placed in storage in case it needed to be used in the future. Dateline airs the episode of the retrial where it indicates that Pam had something to do with Betsy's untimely death. Pam says it's all a bag of crap and lies. Mark, her husband, says maybe no one will see it. Pam is angered because she no longer has control of her story. Pam visits her mom in her old people home, claiming that the staff called her because Shirley hasn't changed her diaper in days and she forces her mother to clean herself. Pam also finds out that her mom is going to cut her out of the will. In retaliation, Pam chooses to poison her mom and kills her with rat poisoning in her gin and tonic nightly drink. Pam goes to leave after poisoning her mother when Shirley begs her not to leave her alone. Pam goes downstairs to the front desk of the senior living home and lets them know her mother Shirley will not be down for dinner that night or for breakfast the following morning. How they should probably check in on her around noon the following morning. It's Halloween night when some trick-or-treating teens find Pam's mom's dead body that had fallen off the broken balcony railing. When this is being investigated, it is now 2016 in Troy, Missouri. Pam goes to a local pet store to return a dog collar with no receipt or tag on it, claiming her dog won't need the collar because it broke its front and back legs, so it's too small to use anymore. But Pam doesn't have a dog. Pam demands that she gets cash back that she paid. Employees identify her as Pam Hupp from the Dateline specials, along with being the talk of the town, so they refuse to let Pam return the collar, which is most likely stolen from the store in its own. Also, you cannot return something that doesn't have a tag on it or a receipt. It doesn't work like that in America, and in certain cases, all you'll get back is store credit. District Attorney Leah Ashke reopens the case of the murder of Betsy Faria. Mike Wood, the man who works in the District Attorney's office with DA Leah Ashke and was college friends with Nate Swanson, one of Russ's lawyers, and Joel Swartz when they met at a local Troy bar. Mike is running against Ashke for DA in the upcoming election. He asked Joel what he knows about Pam because he will be basing his campaign on how Ashke helped a true murderer get off scot-free. If he is elected, he will find the truth to prosecute Pam to the fullest extent. Joel tells Mike everything he knows and evidence he has on Pam Hupp. Pam, fed up with the incident at the pet store, rants to her husband Mark and son Travis about how her town has turned on her and their backs on the Hupp family. Travis, Sarah, and Mark tell Pam that they should just move out of Troy, Missouri, but she refuses to do so. Now back to Pam's mother and Shirley's suspicious death. The coroner has ruled it an accident, but there was 4 times the normal amount of Ambien, which is a prescription drug to help people fall asleep, in Pam's mother's system. The railing on the balcony was cut out so the bottom and the floor was wet, like it had water poured on it. It was about 425 pounds of force max to fall, but would have taken 2,000 pounds for Shirley to fall over the railings without slipping. It also rained that Halloween night, which could have aided in the fall. Pam collected money from her mother's life insurance policy right away. Dateline investigator Kathy Singer was back in town to investigate Shirley's death, and on a call with Kathy, Pam claims she did not kill her mother and does not want to be interviewed at all. It has now been 5 years since Betsy had died, and her daughters are not coping well at all. Mariah, the youngest daughter, is drinking to cope along with writing letters and poems about stuff she wished she said to her mom, but she just keeps them to herself. She lives with Janet, her maternal grandmother, who is trying her best to get her granddaughter to open up to her. Now, remember that civil suit I talked about earlier that Lily and Mariah are suing Pam for their mother's insurance money that was supposedly in a bank trust for them that got the ball rolling for Russ's retrial? Well, the civil trial is about to begin. Janet calls Pam begging to just get the case sorted out, to just give the girls their money, and they will not have to go to court at all. So the trial begins, and Pam walks into the court with all smiles, with the news coverage being outside. Russ shows up to the court in support of the girls, and he's just there to see Pam lose. Pam swears to tell the truth in the court oath before she begins her testimony. The prosecution began asking Pam questions when they hand her a paper with numbers on it, but she can't read it because she needs her reading glasses. Pam is being hostile to the prosecution, claiming she can hardly hear them. She has suffered a brain injury and a concussion. The prosecution asks if Detective McCarrick forced Pam to set up the trust before Russ for his first trial began, which Pam adamantly denies, but they have proof that she is lying about this. They ask her where the money is from Betsy's insurance payout. Pam gives the incorrect information and lies by saying she put $100,000 in a trust for the girls that is untouched and gave $50,000 to a friend who was in a bad situation. Which is like, what the heck, $50K to a friend? But as the audience, we already know that Pam spent almost all the trust money herself. Yes, she set up the trust, but transferred all the money to her account after Russ's first trial when he was convicted. They present the evidence that the trust was closed in December of 2013, and Pam had $134,000 transferred into her account also in December 2013. Where did that money come from? Prosecution asks Pam why she's lying. The court breaks for lunch, and Mariah rushes to get the door for her dad, trying to have some sort of contact with him after 5 long years, and just wants to tell her dad sorry. Russ feels like he can't talk to his girls, but he knows he came to see Pam lose. Pam thinks her testimony went well and talks to her neighbor Minnie about how everybody lies at times. Minnie has a bad cough from the cold weather, and Pam pulls out an unwrapped half-sucked lint-filled lozenge from her purse and hands it to Minnie, who reluctantly takes it. I had no idea what a lozenge was because down in Texas we just call them cough drops. But anyways, the girls don't get to talk in testimonies, but their lawyer assures them that Mrs. Hupp didn't do herself any favors on the stand, and closing statements began. The verdict comes back, and the judge decides that sadly, since the money was supposed to go directly into Betsy's insurance policy wasn't named, even if Betsy intended the girls to get the money when they were older in case she died prematurely. Pam gets to keep the money on a technicality and wins the civil suit. The judge does say though that Pam was not a credible witness. Pam skips out of the courthouse, happy no one can take the money from her, tells Mark that they should buy a new SUV to celebrate their winnings, even though that insurance money is gone. Pam tells him that they'll be fine, she has her mother's death insurance money now, and the house that they bought earlier in the story to flip on Derby Street actually has a buyer interest, so they will no longer have to use the sale money to pay back Betsy's daughters. Later at work, Mariah gets a handwritten letter from Russ that is just a harsh letter bashing the girls. Mariah devastated by this because she misses her stepdad so much, but her sister Lily also works at the same steakhouse. Mariah tells her to just let it go. Russ wasn't the man they always thought he was. The realtor company that is selling the Derby house flip for the Hupps, New Century Realty and Mortgage, calls Pam in the office to tell her that the buyers from Derby have backed out because they discovered Pam was the seller, along with all the drama that comes with Pam. Now, if Pam is a realtor, why didn't she just sell the house herself for sale by the owner? That way she can keep a full commission. I may not know a lot, but as someone who has debated going to realtor school for fun during their gap year, I can understand Pam not belonging to a realtor company herself, so she is unable to sell it that way, but you can always sell a home by buyer in America. Now, DA Leah Ashke no longer wants to be seen with Pam, understanding that it is bad for her re-election image to be seen with her. Tina decides to shred all the letters from the evidence to burn all evidence from Betsy Faria's case, trying to hide that she had the evidence put into storage by going behind Ashke's back. Pam is annoyed. Leah is avoiding her calls and corners Leah in the parking lot of the courthouse, asking why she's not talking to her. Leah tells Pam that she's trying to get reelected, and being seen with the person who constantly wants to play the victim but calls Leah and Mariah date orphans and steals their inheritance money, and tells Pam that if the girls didn't sue them, then Pam would not have such a bad reputation in the town of Troy, Missouri as she does. Lastly, Ashke kind of pops off with this comeback, telling Pam it's hard to be the victim when you keep winning. All Pam can rebuttal with is that if she's just put on the stand like Ashke was supposed to do, then she would have won the retrial. If it was not for herself, Ashley wouldn't have a job right now. She's the best thing to ever happen to Leah Ashley or Kathy Singer. Really, Pam? Kathy Singer, big-time TV producer? Sure, Jan. Travis, Mark, and Pam go out to eat at the steakhouse Mariah works at, when the whole time Pam keeps purposely calling Mariah Marianne, which is like her best friend's child, so why would you do that? Mark upsets Pam when he tells her she is calling Mariah by the wrong name and tells him since she's paying for dinner, he just won't get to eat. She orders 2 hamburgers to go and nothing to eat for Mark. Mariah brings them the check while the food is being packed up to go for them, and Pam pulls out a large wad of $100 bills to pay the bill, taunting Mariah that Pam is using her money. Pam writes a note on the receipt that she is always there for the girls, and Mariah compares it to the letter she got from Russ. And it is the same handwriting, along with Pam not leaving any tip because you know she's a Karen. Pam gets into her newly purchased blackout SUV in the parking lot. Mariah runs out saying that she's done with her, and Pam just berates her by saying, "Do you feel better, sweetheart?" Ironically, didn't mean this as a joke. Now the thing about Pam is she'll always find time for other people. She decides she's gonna purposely ruin Ashley's shoe drive campaign for needy kids and tells every person who stops by to donate a pair of shoes. That Pam is endorsing the re-election of Ashley, subsequently losing each citizen's votes. Pam then turns to Ashley if she still lives on Kenton Street and the value of her house, subtly threatening Ashley's life. Pam's life gets further thrown for a loop when she goes to Zumba and gets kicked out. Minnie, Pam's little lapdog and neighbor, refuses to leave her because she doesn't trust Pam anymore. Mike Wood for Lincoln County for District Attorney's commercial airs, stating the harsh statement that Leah Ashley let Pam Hupp go free for Betsy Faria's murder. If you vote for him, he will guarantee that Pam gets prosecuted for her crimes. Lastly, Pam sews money into a white puffer jacket, same one you see in the trailer poster, along with her Big Chills drink, which I'm pretty sure is the TV show's version of Circle K's Polar Pops, effectively hiding the life insurance money from her mother's policy. Mariah decides it's her time to leave the small town of Troy, Missouri, put this horrible chapter behind her, and move to California, telling her older sister, Lily, to watch out for Pam Hupp. Lastly, Minnie is sick in bed in her house and Pam sneaks in to take care of her, but more likely threatens to kill Minnie. It becomes obvious that Pam is trying to get rid of the people in her way. Mariah, Kathy, Joel, Minnie, and Leah. Finally, onto the last episode in the 6-part limited series. Pam is an admitted avid reader of crime novels who tells Mark that she's cutting up pieces of carpet from a big roll that killers get caught because they keep stuff from their victims. Pam claims she learned that from one of her crime novels. They keep items such as driver's license. People are looking at Pam like she killed someone and it is messing with her business, so now she has to fix it. While Mark and Travis are out of town for the day on business, Pam goes to a local Dollar Tree to buy bleach, aluminum, ammonium, a knife, and cleaning products, then begins driving around saying she is Kathy Singer, a producer from NBC Dateline. She is looking for someone to say some soundbite lines for an episode. She is offering them $1,000 cash for the simple job, which means there will be no paper trail or taxes that need to be made on this transaction. She is driving around a trailer home community when she finds someone, a woman, who agrees to the job. Pam tells her that she cannot bring her wallet, phone, keys, or cigarettes, just herself. This woman goes inside her home claiming she needs to put her dog up and hides a kitchen knife in her hoodie for protection. Pam says that they will be going to a man named Kent, the show manager, at a trailer house rented by Lake St. Louis. Producers such as Pam, aka Kathy Singer, are driving around picking up people to do the soundbite. This woman gets suspicious and backs out, telling Pam that she's actually forgotten that she has plans to go pick up her brother. Pam takes the woman home and she immediately calls 911, telling them about this Kathy woman. Pam stalks another man in the same neighborhood and waits till kids and a woman in the car drive out from the driveway as he waves goodbye to them. Pam asks him if he wants to make $1,000 cash, which he agrees. Pam hands this man $1,000 and takes $100 from him as if she doesn't have thousands of bands at home, stealing from this man. She makes him put the money in his pocket and then tells him that the soundbite he needs to say, which is the following. And I quote, "Do you want me to do to you what we did to Russ's wife?" That's what he has to say, and she makes him hold the knife she bought from the Dollar Tree. The man cannot hold the knife properly or say the line perfectly, getting confused by the words. Pam really said to the man, and I quote, "What's wrong with you?" The poor man, who is named Louis Gumpenberger, tells Pam he was in a bad car accident a long time ago, so now he stutters. He also has some brain issues. Pam takes his hand and places his fingerprints all over the knife and slides it into the large gap between the car's center car console and seat, making sure his DNA is on the knife from the handle to the blade. Pam takes him to her house and makes a man step on the carpet square that she has cut out earlier. Pam calls 911 on her phone, saying someone broke into her house after they got into her car, forced her into her house, and how she needs help. The man steps off the piece of carpet and Pam shoots the man repeatedly with a gun that she had grabbed from her own house safe earlier. Pam is still on the phone with 911, claiming she has shot the intruder and he is now dead. The head police investigator rushes over to her house, listening with the operator over the phone to the weird 911 call. It was odd to the both of them that there was no sound on the line until the operator talked first. Pam also said her name was Pamela Hupp, not Pam Hupp. The police rush over with the new head detective, Officer O'Fallon, to see a dead man on the cutout piece of carpet as he opens the front door. Pam is just in the kitchen making a sandwich when the officer walks in, stating she took care of everything. Pam talks about when she arrived home from her errand, saw a truck waiting for her with a heavy bill driver and another man who jumped out with a knife, threatening her to take him to the bank to get Russ's money. Pam knocked the knife out of his hands and ran inside her house, up the stairs to her nightstand where she kept a gun, and called 911 right away. Guy breaks into her house and she shoots him dead when she's on top of the stairs and on the phone with 911. Pam tells investigators that she saw a paper sticking out of the intruder's pocket along with a plastic bag. The detectives check Pam's car and find the knife she mentioned in her story, along with investigators taking pictures of her own kitchen knives in her home. Mark and Travis arrive home after being out all day in another town over for business to see the crime scene tape in front of her house and multiple police cars. Mark walks up to the lead investigator claiming people are after him. A murderer is after them and the Hupp family, his family. So whatever happened here is no coincidence. The cut carpet sheet comes out full of blood in a clear investigation bag to be sent to a forensic lab for testing. Minnie, the next door neighbor, comes out and says Pam has always been saying weird stuff and how she can testify against her. They're needing a witness for the new case. That's when investigators learn that her name is Pamela Hupp from the Faria case, not Pamela Hupp like she claimed her name was on the phone with 911. Officer O'Fallon tells the investigators that local and national press are going to be all over this investigation and to be prepared to be on Dateline. Russ is out walking his dog when he gets a call from Brian O'Fallon, the head investigator for this new case, with Pam. Russ is in Florida and he learns of the crime that Pam claims he committed against her, and he has to fly back to Troy, Missouri to answer police questions. Pam is in her house after being interviewed, tells Mark that the police stole her kitchen stuff, took all her true crime novels, her cash from her purse and nightstand, as if there's not enough evidence in this case already. She freaks out and runs upstairs to her closet where a safe full of money is located. Police find a note in Lewis's pocket that was supposedly from Russ with a list of bank accounts and a to-do list. Russ is back for questioning in Missouri, and this time Joel, his old lawyer, is by his side since the beginning. Police collect handwritten samples, DNA samples, and receipts of proof of where Russ was during the time when this break-in happened from Russ, who does so all voluntarily. Russ is soon let go because he's been cleared. It was proven that there was no way he could have been the one to orchestrate the scheme. He was literally in Florida. The following morning, after the whole ordeal, Pam writes a check for $122,000 to her husband Mark and takes all that money from her house safe, putting it into a duffel bag. Tells Mark the following morning that she's protecting her financials and defending her home. That's what she was doing currently. Pam was then arrested in her home during breakfast and asked the officers if there are cameras outside before telling Mark she'll see him at home that night for dinner. Kathy Singer is waiting outside watching as Pam is put into the back seat of the police car. Pam asked the officers to turn up the AC because it was hot, and they asked if she understood that she was under arrest for murder. Pam hits them with a Karen's face and just showing that she isn't taking any of this seriously. Pam has read her Miranda rights at the police station and claims that she can't read the paper handed to her because the font is too small. She needs her reading glasses that are in her purse if the police can grab them for her. Brian O'Fallon, the head detective on this case, tells her that she can just borrow his, taking them off from being tucked into his shirt, handing them to Pam while telling her he gets them at the Dollar Tree. Police tell Pam they found a Dollar Tree receipt in her car. The knife she bought from the store is only sold at Dollar Tree, nowhere else. Lewis was not physically able or capable of holding a knife, walking quickly, or even running, all things Pam claims he did when he attacked her at her house. They also found her cell phone by his home. Pam tells officers, that's wonky, the cell towers are usually off, like she knows more than them. The officers tell her that now because of Google Waypoint, they can pin a person's phone meters from location just a few minutes after they were there. Her phone was by Louis Gumberg's home for 4 minutes. The $900 in his pocket has the same serial numbers that match the bills found on Pam's bedside table, along with the $100 bill in her purse, the one she kept. She asks if her lawyer has been called, and officers tell her yes, they have been. She refuses to talk any further until her lawyer arrives. Pam is left alone in the interrogation room with a forgotten pen from the officer along with a water bottle for her to drink out of, and chooses to hide it in her back pocket. She then feels her neck for her carotid nerve and pulse. This is all caught on the interrogation room camera. Pam knocks on the interrogation room door from the inside, asking to be let out so she can use the restroom. A female officer takes her and Pam sits on the toilet fully clothed, just teary-eyed. She stands up after a couple minutes and flushes the unused toilet. Pam turns on the faucet and takes out the pen I mentioned earlier that she hidden on her body. Using the sharp end, Pam stabs herself repeatedly in the neck. Police start banging on the door, hearing that the faucet had been on for a while. Pam claims she's all good, but 3 police officers break down the door as they see Pam passed out on the floor with blood seeping out of her neck. The 3 officers began pressing bathroom paper towels to her neck and send another officer to call a medic. At a pretrial hearing, Sarah, Travis, and Mark are all there talking about Pam, asking who had talked to her that day. Kathy, Joel, and Nate are also there. Kathy asked Joel if he believes Pam supposedly harmed herself in the way she did to truly kill herself. Joel says no, Pam is too narcissistic to hurt herself. Seriously, she missed all major arteries and left the bathroom door unlocked for a reason. Pam did it to plan out her next move. She pled not guilty, also to draw out her trial. Tina, Leah Ashke's assistant, is sitting next to Mike Wood at the pretrial hearing and wishes him good luck on his election run against her boss. The first lady Pam tried to trick to do the voice note thing comes in and sits next to Russ. Her name is Carol. Lewis's mother is in the front row, heartbroken and frail. Pam walks in with a huge bandage on her neck from her pen-induced episode, smiling largely. She withdraws her former plea of guilty and takes an Alford plea. An Alford plea is a guilty plea in which a defendant maintains their innocence and does not admit to a criminal act they are accused of, but admits that the prosecution has significant evidence to persuade a jury or judge to find that the defendant guilty, and thus agrees to be treated as guilty. It's a cop-out. She'll just never have to stand trial. Pam is sent to prison for life to avoid capital punishment. Lastly, the show wraps up with Pam on the prison payphone with Mark, with a full-on gray head of hair, while she claims people are treating her like Ted Bundy, the way they are acting with her in prison. The following are the updates the TV series provides us with. Mark ends up divorcing Pam and elopes in Las Vegas with his new wife. He and his new wife still live in the house that he and Pam once did, and the one where Pam shot Louis Gummenberg to death. Pam's family isn't a suspect of wrongdoing. Mariah Day returned to Missouri and recently gave birth to her second child. She named the baby Elizabeth after her mother. Russ has still not spoken to Betsy's daughters or his previous stepdaughters. However, he is now engaged to Carol, the first woman Pam tried to harm. Mike Wood won his election against Leah Ashke and serves on the Lincoln County District Attorney. One of his first acts as DA was to reopen Betsy Faria's murder case on June 20th, 2019. Leah Ashke is being investigated for prosecutorial misconduct during the Faria case and denies any wrongdoing. Joel remains one of the leading defense attorneys in St. Louis, Missouri. On occasion, Joel and Nate still try cases together. The death of Pam's mother remains unofficially undetermined, but is now being investigated as part of a reopened Faria murder case. Since Pam Hupp took an Alford plea, Louis Gummenberg family never saw her stand trial for his murder. In July 2021, the state brought charges against Pam Hupp for the murder of Betsy Faria. Lastly, the closing of the show ends with Pam Hupp claiming everything on the TV show said was all wrong. You know how they are. And that was everything on the TV show, The Thing About Pam, the limited series. Now we're gonna get into the real life story and updates plus more. Let's get into it. So before we get into the real life story, I want to talk a little bit about the TV show like I always do. Some facts and behind the scenes, which I think is really interesting to learn. First, the actor who played Pam, Renee Zellweger, the 53-year-old 5'4" actress, is actually the actress from the Bridget Jones Diaries movie series. She wore a fat suit because she didn't want to gain the weight needed to play Pam. Renee had gained weight for her role as Bridget Jones for all the movies when she is a relatively small woman. So when she got this role, her one condition was to be able to use a fat suit, sort of how Chris Hemsworth used one in Avengers Endgame for his character. She would spend every shoot day in hair and makeup along with getting the fat suit prosthetics put on for 4 hours straight. At the end of the series, it took 2 hours and 30 minutes. Renee has come out to say in promotional interviews for the show that she learned she was severely allergic to the glue adhesive used to apply her prosthetics, and that she would have to take buttloads of Benadryl allergy pills every day. Renee also executive produced this series. So let's get back to the conversation of NBC Dateline and their podcast. As mentioned in the TV series, NBC Dateline did multiple episodes on this case, which from what I can count are 2 that are mentioned in the show, 1 full recap episode to promote the new drama series, and an 11-minute special episode on Peacock, NBC Universal streaming service, along with the recap of 5-episode series of Dateline. There is also an episode on this case on Oxygen Snapped. I'm gonna be honest with you, I did not watch any of these or listen to the podcast at all. All I did was watch the drama series, mostly because I wanted to do a video on it for Charlatans and Swindlers. I didn't really want to watch the series. The thing is that I do not like Dateline, like at all, when I sometimes watch them. In my opinion, they take the humanity out of the case and make it so 7 different people tell the case rather than 1 to 2 people. My theory is that the NBC Universal bought the rights to this case early on because when you Google the case, most articles that pop up are made by NBC News. They own the monopoly. On top of that, NBC Universal owns Oxygen, which produced Snapped up until 2020 when they sold the network for $500 million to another company, but still are advisors for the networks. Anyways, the 2014 NBC Dateline episodes made on the case were some of the top 3 ever performing episodes of Dateline, only behind O.J. Simpson and JonBenet Ramsey, which makes sense why they milked this case so much to make a podcast and drama TV show out of it. Pam Hupp did know that the TV show was being made about her, and that closing scene of the series was about real-life Pam, who is still in jail, claiming how the TV producers wrote everything wrong about her. I also want to acknowledge that I did not like this show at all. Like, at all. It was told in a weird The Office type of way, like they were trying to make a satire-like-esque feel on this case, making ironic jokes and humoring it alongside with the whole thing being narrated by Keith Morrison, who I like, but would foreshadow a lot of things in a rude ironism type of way. I think it would be a good way to do a fiction type of true crime show, but not a TV show based on a real life case. That is probably the biggest reason why I didn't like this show so much. It felt very disrespectful because people were murdered. There was no reason to make the show a satirical, ironic joke. Lastly, on the TV show, before we move on to the real case, what happened in the updates, this TV show was written directly from the material of interviews with the real-life people in the case, and the podcast by the same name, The Thing About Pam, which came out in 2019, as I mentioned earlier. Also, those interviews were made while writing the podcast. NBC saw how successful the podcast was, just like the Dateline episodes, and immediately developed it into a TV series that was postponed when the pandemic started. So all the material used to write the series was taken directly from the podcast, those interviews, and Dateline episodes, so no other outside sources. But also, NBC Universal owns the monopoly on this case, so are we very surprised? Let's get into what did not happen in the real life story compared to the TV series. Okay, first, a big one. Lily Day's real name is Leah Day. So it's not Lily Day, it's Leah Day. Fox 2 Now local news in St. Louis, Missouri covered this story religiously. They played an important role in this case other than NBC. And I think they did not include that fact because, like I said, NBC has the monopoly on this case, and I don't think they wanted to bring light to one of their direct competitors. The show makes it all seem like Shirley Newman was found by teenagers trick-or-treating, but she was actually found, according to Fox 2 Now reports, by a housekeeper at Lakeview Park in Fenton, the facility where Newman lived. They found her body approximately at 2:30 p.m. the day after Halloween. Second, in an interview, the Day sisters did ask police if they were looking into Pam Hupp as a suspect. However, Lincoln County investigators made them feel dumb for thinking Pam committed the crime even after the girls pointed out that Pam was the last one to see their mom. Made sure that she picked up their mom that evening, but authorities told them that they knew Russ was the only possible killer. I think they also changed Leah Day's name to Lily Day because there was 2 Leahs, Leah Ashke and Leah Day, as to not get the viewers confused on that. Also, like the TV show, Mariah did receive a hateful letter at her and Leah's work restaurant, but even though her letter had no sign named, sent anonymous, the girls assumed Russ wrote it, creating a larger rift between the 3. The police conspired to keep them away from Russ, and Pam sent them letters to keep them against their stepdad. The letter also arrived during the first trial, not the second trial like the TV show claims. This also edged them to testify against him further in the first trial. Mariah also never was very close to her stepdad, as the show portrays. Lastly, the TV show portrays that Louis Gummenberger and Carol Alfred McPhee were neighbors. But actually, after letting Alfred go, Hupp's cell phone track data shows that 6 days later, she lured Gummenberg from his apartment into her house. So they weren't very much neighbors, and they didn't happen back to back, those 2 incidents. Russ and Carol are now engaged, and as the show portrays, and yes, they did meet through Pam's crime, so something kind of good came out of that. Anyways, enough with that. Let's get into the true story. As a reminder, I will now be putting the real photos of the people in the case on the screen. What we saw in the first part of this was the actors. Now you're going to see the real people, so you can compare the 2, see if the casting was done good. And yeah, now the TV show is very similar and almost identical to the real case, with some interesting details in the series being left out. So I'm gonna go through the case in a bullet style point because it's pretty much like the show. There's just a couple things that are not. I will be stopping to talk in depth about some important points to the story that NBC left out. Just like the TV show, Pam Hupp had a normal childhood in Delwood, Missouri, about 55 minutes away from Troy, Missouri. She was born into an integral middle-class white Catholic family in the suburbs, just like the show. Her mom was a teacher, but it was never mentioned, kind of insinuating that Pam was raised by a single mother as an only child. Pam had a union dad and was raised with 2 other siblings. She grew up to become the ideal white suburban woman who became a middle-class mom who lived in the Midwest with blonde hair, colored eyes, and a penny-pinching attitude. However, Pam was known to be a super frugal housewife. She would short-circuit and would do anything for money. Before Before she became a criminal, Pam had a normal life, just like the series. Pam got pregnant on her high school senior prom night and had a shotgun Catholic wedding with her first husband, Randy Gunderson. Her high school friends went off to college and Pam became a teen mom to her daughter, Sarah. They were married for 6 years. Then Pam left Randy for Mark, just like the TV show. Now, there's not much on Randy that you can find on the internet. I tried. I mean, good for him. He can stay out of this case as much as he's able to. Pam forced Randy to appear in family court with canceled checks to prove that he paid his child support. Pam, Sarah, and Mark moved to Naples, Florida, and had their son Travis, who played AAA baseball until he got injured. The Hupp family moved back to Missouri following Pam's father's death in 2001. When she came back, she never talked to her old high school friends, nor made any new ones. Pam was a part of the women's club at the Catholic Church and sent Sarah and Travis to a Catholic grade school. Pam worked a string of low-paying insurance jobs that she would leave constantly before she eventually filed for disability over chronic pain issues stemming from accidents she claimed she had suffered from. Which, did you know that it's extremely hard to get Social Security disability? That process can take at least 3 months at the very least, 2 years to get. A good lawyer most of the times is needed, and years of documents of doctor notes from multiple specialists is needed. I'm not going to tell you how I know this, but someone close to me has gone through the process and it is hard. So how Pam got it, I mean, she must have been, either she really was in all that pain or she must have been faking it till she made it, because that is hard to do. It came out later that Pam was fired from her insurance jobs for forging signatures. But before getting fired, Pam actually met Betsy while working at State Farm together in 2001, where they developed a friendship. Betsy was actually 11 years Pam's junior, and they created an office friendship. Then the two lost touch until the news of Betsy's metastatic cancer diagnosis almost 10 years later in 2010. Their relationship rekindled, and Pam would often drive Betsy to and from chemotherapy appointments like the show. Now, we know from the series that Pam called Betsy her best friend, but in an interview with a local news station, Fox 2, Russ claims Betsy had a ton of friends, and she was much closer with them than Pam. Now, it was believed that Betsy was in remission by October 2011. Cancer had spread to her liver, making her diagnosis terminal. In December 2011, the two women went to Wing Haven's library and filled out a change of beneficiary form for Betsy's life insurance policy. Pam became the sole beneficiary of Betsy's $150,000 life insurance policy. Also in 2011, Pam Hupp and her friend Betsy Faria, who was suffering from terminal cancer, collected money for another family afflicted by cancer in the neighborhood, the Murphy family, without that family being made aware of the collection. Pam and Betsy went door to door passing out flyers and reportedly collected over $10,000. The flyer had a picture of the Murphy family from their Christmas card and stated that this would be James Murphy's wife, Laura's last Christmas. Betsy was thrilled to be helping another family affected by the disease that was killing her. She saw her role in the collection as a way that she could be remembered long after she was gone. The problem was that Pam had gone behind the Murphys' backs and exaggerated Laura Murphy's story for her own financial gain. While Laura Murphy did have cancer, she wasn't on her deathbed. She survived for 2 more Christmases. No evidence was found to suggest that Betsy had any knowledge that Pam intended to keep that money instead of giving it to the Murphy family. On the night of December 27, 2011, Russell Faria came home from his Tuesday game night to find his wife laying on the living room floor with her wrist cut. Panicking, he called 911 and told the operator he believed his wife had took her own life. Now, Betsy had threatened suicide in the past and had tried to do so previously. She would leave note. However, Russ didn't see stab wounds all over Betsy's body. Police found this suspicious, and Russ didn't report this to the 911 operator. I mean, he saw his wife dead in a pile of blood and called 911. That's all it was. He wasn't investigating her body to look for anything. As far as he knew, she ended her own life. Lincoln County investigators interrogated Russ for 10 hours that night. Earlier that evening, Pam drove Betsy home from her mother's house in Lake St. Louis. She would later tell police that her friend was planning on leaving her husband, whom she claimed had a violent temper. The next day, Russ was arrested for murder. On July 4th, 2012, 2 charges were laid against Russ Faria: first-degree murder and armed criminal action. Russ had 4 people to corroborate his alibi, plus a time-stamped receipt from Arby's. He had made multiple pit stops on his way home from game night. Prosecutors' strongest evidence was a pair of Russ's house slippers found with blood on them at his home, but there was no blood on the soles and no footprints anywhere. The trial began on November 18th, 2013, and November 21st, the jury found Russ Faria guilty on both counts of first-degree murder and armed criminal action. In December of 2013, he was sentenced to life plus 30 years without parole. Just like the show, Russ's attorney, Joel Schwartz, wasn't allowed to present evidence pointing to Pam Hupp as an alternative suspect. The jury never heard about how she changed her story to the police multiple times, had no solid alibi, was the last person to see Betsy alive, and became the sole beneficiary of Betsy's life insurance policy just a few days before her death. Also, that letter mentioned in the show was uploaded onto Betsy's laptop the day before Pam became the beneficiary to Betsy's life insurance policy, 5 days before the murder. Fox 2 News and St. Louis Post-Dispatch played an integral role in getting a retrial for Russ. Their reports brought to light the suppressed evidence and trial and exposed the lies told by the prosecution key witness. Chris Haynes, the journalist, was the only reporter at Russ's trials. The head journalist fully expected that somebody would come and question him wanting more information about what Pam was doing. Nothing ever happened. No one ever came and asked him. A judge released Faria on jail bond and granted him a retrial in June 2015. And on November 7, 2015, a judge overturned the previous conviction, exonerating Russ for his wife's murder. During the retrial, Pam was asked why she became the sole beneficiary of Betsy's $150,000 life insurance policy. She attempted to explain that $100,000 would be set up in a trust for Betsy's daughters, and the other $50,000, and I quote, "My other girlfriend died of breast cancer in August. She had a 12-year-old daughter that I am trying to help." And as we can guess, the daughter's friend never received help. Russ would later file a civil suit against the prosecutor and several deputy sheriffs for mishandling his case. In 2020, 5 years after he was found not guilty of Betsy's murder, Russ sued the officers who arrested him, alleging that they had fabricated evidence and failed to investigate the other previous suspects. Russ was granted a $2 million settlement in a civil suit against the officers who mishandled the case that led to his conviction. Then, the suspicious death of Shirley Newman, Pam's mother, happened on October 30th, 2013. A housekeeper at Lakeview Park Independent Senior Living Community in Fenton, Missouri, found Shirley's body below her third-floor balcony. The 77-year-old Alzheimer's patient had fallen through the railings. Her autopsy showed that she had 8 times the normal dose of Ambien in her system. The last person to see her alive was her daughter, Pam Hupp. Fox 2 News in St. Louis extensively covered the Betsy Faria case, as well as the other mysterious deaths surrounding Pamela Hupp. On October 16, 2016, Pam called 911 to report a home invasion in progress. She shot the supposed perpetrator 5 times, killing him in what was reportedly self-defense, just like the show. There's never been a question that she shot 33-year-old Louis Gumbenberger. Hupp claimed her actions were just in self-defense. Prosecutors say that she plotted the killing for days to make someone else look guilty. Hupp was tired of people questioning if she was involved in Betsy's death, plotted Gumbenberger's murder to escape suspicion. When officers arrived on the scene, they found $900 in cash and a handwritten note in the man's pocket. The note appeared to be from someone putting a hit out on Pam, telling the man to, and I quote, "get Russ's money, then kill her." This alleged hitman was identified as 30-year-old Louis Gumbenberger, an innocent man who Hupp lured to her house. Investigators connected the knife and bills back to Hupp and uncovered her elaborate scheme to frame Russ. What Pam Hupp didn't know was Louis suffered from mental impairment and nerve damage stemming from a 2005 car accident. He was a person incapable of functioning at a level to do what was being perpetrated that he had done. Louis' disability made it highly unlikely that he'd be able to ever attempt such a crime. Not only did he not have the mental capacity to perform a ransom, kidnapping, murder for hire, but he was also physically unable to even do basic things such as running. St. Charles County investigators remembered a file reported by Carol McPhee 6 days before the incident. She was propositioned by a woman claiming to be a Dateline producer, willing to pay a lot of money for her to reenact a 911 call for an upcoming episode. Pam used the very same ruse to pick up vulnerable Louis Gumbenberger. But to prove that, it's going to take more than speculation. Pam was unsuccessful in this attempt, and Carol had security cameras on her property that captured a clear shot of Pam's license plate. There's evidence that Pam's phone was at Louis Gumbenberger's apartment, meaning Pam herself must have been there too. Pam was arrested on August 23, 2016 at the police station. Just like the TV series, she went to the bathroom to seemingly try and take her own life. Using a pen she spotted behind her water bottle, then quietly reached for the bottle, pulled it out with the pen, tucked it into her pants, and felt for her arteries in her neck. That December, a grand jury indicted Pam for first-degree murder and armed criminal action. In November 2017, a medical examiner changed Shirley Newman's, Pam's mother, cause of death from accidental to undetermined. In summer 2019, Pam entered an offered plea with the condition that the death penalty would be taken off the table and waived her right to a jury trial. She agreed to plead guilty because the state had enough evidence to convict her, not because she admitted to it all. She was found guilty and sentenced to life without parole. At the end of the hearing, Pam Hupp made the same walk back to jail that Russ Faria had over 8 years ago when he was wrongfully convicted. The new Lincoln County prosecutor, Mike Wood, reopened Betsy Faria's case that same year. And in July 2021, Pam was charged with first-degree murder and armed criminal action against Betsy for her murder. Those were the same charges that Russ was charged with all those years ago. As of March 2022, Pam Hupp is serving a life sentence at St. Charles County Jail in Missouri. In July 2021, at the same time Pam was charged in Betsy's killing, the prosecutor, Mike Wood, also announced he was launching a criminal investigation to the officers and former prosecutors who handled Betsy's case, stating, and I quote, "No one here is above the law." Findings in that inquiry have not yet to be made public. In 2019, Mike Wood claimed the following about Pam Hupp in prison. She was just manipulative throughout every possible place she could manipulate. Pam's appearances have changed drastically over the years, mostly after her arrest. She has lost weight and the color of her hair is no longer blonde, but rather gray from old age. She now has a job inside the prison, tutoring other inmates seeking their GEDs. Mark Hupp divorced Pam Hupp after her conviction. He was the only family member who seemed to stand by her side throughout everything. He still owns the O'Fallon, Missouri home where Louis Gummenberger was shot to death. Hupp was scheduled to have her preliminary hearing in February 22 for the Betsy Faria murder charge. It has since been delayed indefinitely because her public defender died of a heart attack. A new defense attorney must now get up to speed on 10 years worth of evidence. Hupp's trial could be years away and will likely be moved to a different part of the state. Faria's attorney, Joel Swartz, co-authored a new book, Bone Deep Untangled, the Betsy Faria murder case. Swartz continues to create new chapters as he cooperates with the ongoing law enforcement corruption investigation. Sadly, in the end, Betsy Faria, Louis Gummenberger, and Shirley Newton all died for senseless and inhumane reasons. I don't know if Mrs. Fitzgerald actually ever existed in the real-life case. I wanted to say she did from what I heard years ago when I first heard about this case, but going back on it, I couldn't find any evidence that she did, so I just kind of skipped over that. So I can't tell you if that's true or if it's not. I can't find any information. Now, in the end, I do appreciate that the TV show stuck really close to the real life case, but again, I didn't enjoy the sarcasm they had in the show at all. And that's saying something because I love sarcasm, but I can't when people died. But that is it for this Charlatans and Swindlers. Let me know if you liked it down below. Let me know what you think. What do you think? Have you seen the TV show? Did you like it? Are you like me and you didn't like it? Let me know. Did you know about this case? Let me know down below. If you have any recommendations of other cases I should do in the Charlatans and Swindlers, let me know. And the doggy picture of the day is this picture of Nova being a cutie patootie. And that's it. I'll see you guys next time. Love you, mean it, kisses. Bye.